Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. Go ahead and run clip two, Mr. Producer.
And I want to understand white rage, and I'm white, and I want to understand it. So, what is it that caused thousands of people to assault this building and try to overturn the Constitution of the United States of America? What caused that? I want to find that out. I want to maintain an open mind here, and I do want to analyze it. It's important that we understand that because our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians, they come from the American people. So it is important that the leaders, now and in the future, do understand it. I've read Mao Zedong. I've read Karl Marx. I've read Lenin. That doesn't make me a communist. So what is wrong with understanding, having some situational understanding about the country for which we are here to defend?
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. We're talking today with retired U.S. Army Major Chase Spears, who was also the spokesman for U.S. Army Recruiting Command that was really prohibited from talking about a lot of the things that are causing the recruiting and retention problem and actually weakening our military forces and therefore weakening our status in the world and our deterrent effect, as you can see around the world. Deterrence, the United States and allied deterrence against warfare is failing every single day somewhere in the rest of the world. And life didn't used to be that way. Well, welcome back to the show, Chase. Before the break, we were talking about what the parents are seeing and those kind of things, and you were talking about your experience. That was Mark Milley there with his famous white rage comment, which he's completely disconnected from reality. The reality is that critical race theory and this Marxism is being used to indoctrinate our forces, indoctrinate our sessions, including our officer corps at the service academies, and queer theory, gender theory. They're all based in Marxism. It's not about studying Marx. I've read Marx. I studied Soviet communism. I've studied China's communism, but this is about indoctrinating a political ideology into our forces. Is it not?
It absolutely is. There's no other way to describe it. Like you, I enjoy being widely read. If you saw the stack of books that I'm always working, it's rather tall. I enjoy reading widely. I enjoy reading authors that I disagree with. I enjoy reading. I've read quite a bit of Marxist literature over my last 4 years as a doctoral student. That's kind of par for the course in today's academy. I'm all about being exposed to a wide array of ideas. But that's what I choose to do as a scholar. That's what you chose to do as a man who wants to be well learned. That's entirely different than being in the military context and having books that are written to have a hostile point of view and to perpetuate a hostile point of view towards our way of life, to say this is the part of the professional reading list, this is how we want you to think, this is what we want you to absorb. That's absolutely divisive. Now, if a soldier wants to read that stuff on their own time for learning and for understanding the humanities better, I'm all for it. I love reading. I love learning. But that's entirely different than having your chain of command at a service academy put books in your hand that are absolutely against everything that we believe in, saying, read this, understand it. This is the way we think.
Yeah, and that session Milley was in was before Congress, and part of it was talking about Lloyd Austin and Joe Biden's anti-extremism training program, mandatory training program that was executed in the summer of 2021 after Biden took office on the military. It was part of that discussion, and we just learned in a report just days ago, I think, that in 2018 white recruiting for white Americans was at about 44,000, a little bit over 44,000. But in 2023, that has dropped to just over 25,000, almost 50%. And folks, you should keep in mind that the majority of the folks that sign up to be what I call trigger pullers or bomb droppers, the people that meet the enemy at the point of the spear with weapons, and their job is to seek out and destroy America's enemies or die trying, quite frankly. That cohort is white males. About 90% of them, most of them are. So this is a dramatically dangerous issue when we look at it from now that we've got these numbers, isn't it, Chase?
It absolutely is. Imagine, if you would, we had a 50% drop in blacks enlisting in the force, and Hispanics enlisting in the force, and women enlisting in the force. There would be absolute outrage at the top service levels. There'd be outrage at the congressional level, trying to figure out how did we alienate an entire people group to where they no longer want to associate with the Army. But because it's white men, big whoop. They don't seem to, that doesn't ring an alarm bell, except for the fact that it's a significant slice into their numbers. We had this concept, I'm sure you've heard of it during your time in the Air Force, called the Southern Smile. And the idea is, when you look at these states from Appalachia working their way down south, across the Gulf Coast area into Texas, that's kind of the Southern
Hmm.
Smile where most recruits come from. They're mostly conservative, very patriotic. That's been the majority of the recruiting base for the last several decades. Well, in the last few years, we've had senior military leaders say, we want to get away from that. I sat in a room my last about 2 years before I retired, and I had a general officer say out loud, we need to get away from recruiting those Southern people because they don't look like America. And I really had to hold myself back. I thought to myself, they looked enough like America to bleed and die in Afghanistan. They looked enough like America to go to Iraq time and time and time again. What's the excuse? Well, the only logical conclusion one can come to is that there's a political factor at play here, to where the current ruling elite class wants the military to look very different. They want to transform it, and they make no bones about it.
Yeah, that's something I read this week too. I'm from a multi-generational military service family. It goes back to July of 1775 on my dad's side,
Mm,
and every generation has volunteered to serve, not drafted, but volunteered in at least one of the services during that time, during up to today, including three of my four sons have volunteered to serve, and my fourth son, I refuse to recruit him. I'm not going to recruit him, even though he would make a great soldier, airman, sailor, marine, or whatever they call the Space Force people, guardians or Coast Guardsmen. I just refuse to recruit him under this cloud. When the reason why male recruiting, and it's a white male problem, because what
mhm.
16% of the force is women, so this problem is a white male problem. And one of the reasons Millie was having to answer questions about that extremism training is because it targeted white males. My
Mhm.
third son, who was on active duty at the time, was a brand new staff sergeant, shift leader on the night shift in maintenance on the flight line. And he had to take his men and women through an exercise that, in the end, clearly showed physically that white males were more privileged than everybody else in the
Mm.
unit, because of a required training exercise and everything. And he left active duty within 6 months of having to give that training, and I encouraged him to leave because I was shocked by that. And it's weakening our force, though, Chase. I mentioned that most of the trigger pullers and bomb droppers are white men, and it's not that women can't do it or other folks can't do the job. I'm sure anybody that's physically and mentally qualified ought to be able to compete for those jobs. It's just that women are built different, quite frankly, and they're not necessarily the best physically, especially physically, to do those jobs. So they don't get into them, even though many of them probably try. I know they do. I mean, my best combat pilots in my last combat deployment as a flying squadron commander were women. The top two combat co-pilots were women in my squadron, and because they could do the job, and it just really, quite frankly, when you stop recruiting the cohort and you tell the cohort that provides you those numbers that you need in order to be a ready fighting force to defend America, you're intentionally damaging our readiness and our deterrent effect around the world. And the bad guys see it because they're watching everything. And today they can see almost everything. There's very little you can hide. when it comes to culture and the military and those kind of things. So it's just really sad and everything. But what is what is going to be the change that's needed in order for the services to turn this around? Because I'm cheering for them. I'm rooting for them. I don't want my institution that I served and my dad served and brothers served and all of my dad's family has served back to the 1775 to fail. I want it to be strong so that we have a free America that my grandchildren can grow in.
Yeah, I'm with you. I love the military. I gave 20 years of my life. I wanted to give a 30 years of my life. That's what my wife and I planned on. We loved what we did. We loved the adventure, but it just became very real to us that this was not going to be a happy place for us long term. That someone who looked like me, who thought like me, was not going to be welcomed among the new diverse ranks of the Biden post era military. I like you. I'm cheering for the military. I want to be able to go out and tell young people it's a great opportunity. I want to go out and tell my kids it's a great opportunity. I have one son who serves in the National Guard, but the rest of my children at this current point in time, I'm not encouraging any of them to go in. And them having watched what my life was like the last couple of years, they have no desire to go in currently. It all starts at the
That's
top.
unfortunate.
Uh,
It does. It
yeah.
does. Let's take a question from the live audience real quick before we go to the next break. Go ahead, Kat, Shell.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, Colonel, I think you guys nailed it on the head, right? You have to be proud of
Mhm.
not only the country, right, but
Yeah.
proud of the commander in chief and trust in him that he's not going to take you into unnecessary wars and he's not going to put you through the stuff that they see the military being put through now. The thing that really alarmed me was when Dick Durbin said to address this problem on the Senate floor, he proposed to bring in illegals directly into the military. I was interested in what your thoughts were on that.
That's a great question, Chase. I'd like to get your thoughts on that. What do you think about illegal aliens being allowed to serve with the expectation to earn citizenship in the United States Armed Forces?
That's got to be an absolute non-starter for our nation. We've had many lawful immigrants come into the military and have an expedited method because of their military service to get their citizenship, and I think that's wonderful. I think that's honorable. When I was stationed at Fort Meade many years ago, I got to go up to Baltimore a couple of times and actually watch a couple of our soldiers get sworn in as citizens. It was just a very exciting, very proud moment for all of us to know the change that was happening in their life, but know how hard they worked to earn that. But when you have
Hmm.
legal immigration, that's an entirely different thing. How do you expect someone who is here unlawfully to take the pledge, the oath of service seriously? That's
Yeah.
an absolutely foreign concept. Do we want a mercenary force? That is a dangerous thing. Standing armies were known to be a dangerous thing to liberty all throughout our history. That would
Mhm.
just You're just inviting the fox into the henhouse at that point in time.
Oh, you absolutely are. Taking an oath to the Constitution of the United States when the first action you took was to break it because it's the
Hmm.
law of the land. Well, we got to take our next break, but when we come back, I'm going to show an Army commercial that proves that even though they won't acknowledge it to the American people, that they've figured out who they really need to be recruiting. I'm Ryan Maness here on Patriot TV, and we'll be right back with retired Major Chase Spears.